Today we're going to show a demo of the Gestalt framework's ability to emulate the API of containers as service offerings and to also federate them and allow for migrations of containers across them and other pieces. So I'm just going to jump in and show you, first of all, we're in the demo workspace environment here in the Galactic Fog organization. And if you take a look at our providers that we have set up for production, you'll see we have a DCOS1 with the configuration for Amazon. That maps to this Amazon instance that we have right here. And similarly, I have another Marathon adapter right here that is mapped to v2.galacticfog.com, which is right here. So if I jump back to my resources and I take a look at my my containers that I've already deployed, you can see that we currently have two containers deployed, one in the GF Marathon cluster and one in DCOS1, which maps to this web server 2 right here in the DCOS1, and web server 1, which is in the same place. So those are the two that we have, different providers. If I bring up the command line and I run a DCOS Marathon Atlas, this is the unmodified version of the DCOS command line, you can see that we have both of them. They both show up, which is not how the DCOS command line typically works because the Marathon isn't a cross-cluster aware architecture, but we make it that way. And the way that we do that is by basically setting the URL for Marathon to the meta service that we've got. And that lets us basically see, in our meta service, we'll basically take the containers from all providers and it will return it like it's in a single provider. So that's its ability to kind of emulate the API and federate out. If you try to target this and actually deploy something, however, like we'll add an Nginx CLI web test server, that works as well. If I come back here and do a refresh, you'll see that this is coming up and it's chosen to be in this GF Marathon cluster. And the reason for that is that we've targeted that with just basically a real simple command line wrapper that we have that we use to set the configuration of DCOS. So here I will set it to Galactic Fog root. And you'll see that it will now ask us to navigate the same kind of pathing. So I say the organization 12, the demo workspace, and that last one went to most production. The last one went to command line server, went to GF Marathon cluster. So let's do it to DCOS1 this time. So now we've retargeted the DCOS command line tool, and if I run the exact same command, what you're going to see is that if I come here and do a refresh, we now have the other one in DCOS. So as you can see, we basically we can federate that. It does require the wrapper if you want to target specific ones, unless you set a default. Otherwise, the views are straightforward. Now, one of the other things that happens is we're not just a dumb proxy; we're actually a stateful managing proxy. So if you go here to say this cluster and let's take this web server 2, I can go in here and destroy this web server, right? So it's gone. We've blown it away. If I jump back to Galactic Fog's UI and I refresh, you'll see that we've detected it as lost. So we're aware that something happened behind the scenes that we had no control of and killed it. The other thing that we can do is we can resurrect it. So I can migrate this back. And right now it's in DCOS1, so I can actually bring it back to the GF Marathon cluster. I could also just rescale it back up, and it would come up. But we'll take a look here. It's DCOS1, should be migrated now. And it is. Now you see that there's 3 in GF Marathon cluster. So we go here, web server 1 and web server 2 are now on the same server. So there we've done migration. Probably the coolest thing about the migration is that the way that we did that is by using a Lambda. And so you can override all the functionality inside of Gestalt. Here you see we have a clone and delete function that does it actually runs migrate. And it does all the migrations. We actually inject the provider and all the other event details whenever we do a migration. And that's basically set up with a policy. So if I bring up my policy screen, you'll see that we have a migration, and there's a simple migrate, and that is currently set up to trigger on the container.migrate event. So that's how we do that. So you could do stateful migrations or unstateful, and you could quickly adapt all of our behavior. You could also set it up so that if containers fail or a cluster fails, we can automatically restart them somewhere else. So that's a demonstration of this capability. We're looking to add a number of other containers as a service offerings. We're going to have the full suite of anything that's popular and cool out there, and the goal for that is to let developers use whatever they want, any tooling, any UI frameworks, anything that they want, and still be able to inject policy and control into an environment, and also be able to support many different tools and developer solutions, while having the backend be anything that you want, anything specific. So we could map things from different container as a service providers between each other. Thank you. Please reach out to sales@galacticfog if you have any questions, and much appreciated for your time.